Technology, Greater Noida. I welcome the expert for this session, Professor Prem Brat, former Director, IIT Roorkee, Uttarakhand, and Dr. Mohammad Asim Kadri, Director, GCET. It's my privilege to introduce you all to our expert, Professor Prem Brat, sir. Professor Brat has also served as Vice Chancellor, AKTU, Professor, Head, Center for Management Studies, Coordinator, Applied Systems Research Program, Dean, Deputy Director, and Director Officiating at IIT Delhi, Professor and Division Chairman of Asian Institute of Technology, Bangkok, and also the AICT Distinguished Chair Professor. He has extensive experience of more than 52 years in teaching, research, management, development, and consultancy. Once again, we are pleased to have you here with us today. I request Dr. Mohammad Asim Kadri, Director GCET, to please welcome the guest.
You are muted, Dr.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Aram. Dear colleague, participant, faculty member, and student, I am pleased to welcome you all to the final lecture in the Distinguished Chair Professor series organized by the All India Council for Technical Education. We have been privileged to host Professor Prem Brat, a renowned scholar and eminent expert in the field of engineering and technology. Professor Brat has been with us for the last few months and has delivered 4 outstanding lectures on various topics of importance, including quality assurance model in education, employability model for engineers and managers, theory of motivation, and multi-career decision-making techniques. We are honored to have him as part of this series, and his insight and expertise are invaluable to our academic community. In today's talk, Professor Brat will be sharing his insight on the new Education Policy 2020, a landmark policy that seeks to transform the education system in India. The policy has far-reaching implications for students, teachers, and education institutions across the country. We are eager to hear Professor Brat's view on this critical policy and how it will impact the education system in India. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to AICT for organizing this series of lectures and for nominating Professor Brat to deliver these lectures at our institute. I would also like to thank Professor Brat for sharing his expertise with us and for delivering such insightful and informative lectures throughout the series. I am sure that today's lecture on the new education policy 2020 by Professor Brat will be no exception, and I look forward to hearing his view on this important policy and to a stimulating discussion afterward. Once again, a very warm welcome to Professor Brat and to all of you, and I wish you all an enlightening and productive lecture. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kadri, and good morning, all dear participants joining in virtual mode. This is my final session out of the 5 sessions delivered. Now, the topic here is NEP 2020, an overview and implementation strategy. I may like to mention that the word NEP many times is called new education policy. It's not. Actually, NEP refers to national education policy. It's not new education policy, it's national education policy. So it's a national education policy 2020. And the reason why it's given national, because the earlier, prior to this is the third of the national education policies that have been developed by the Ministry of Education. First one being in 1968, second was 1986, and this is the third one. But they have called it NEP 2020, National Education Policy 2020, because it addresses holistically the entire issues concerning at a national level, and therefore my contention will be to share with you the basic aspects of this national education policy. This was prepared under the chairmanship of Dr. K. Kasturirangan, who is the former chairman of ISRO, after very extensive consultation. In fact, the USP of National Education Policy 2020 has been that this has been evolved after very extensive consultations at national level concerning all stakeholders. And therefore, because of the extensive consultation at the national level amongst the various stakeholders, this policy has been framed, as I mentioned. Prior to that, the policy was governed by 1986 education policy, which actually gave a statutory status to AICT. It might interest you to know that before 1986 Act of this education policy, although AICT existed since 1947 or even earlier, but it did not have statutory status. The second education policy evolved in 1986, gave a statutory position, which means that all engineering and management education in the country, which come under the technical education title, have to be, the AICT became a major regulatory authority for regulating entire technical education system. And the NEP 2020 is much more than simply regulating. In fact, the perhaps its more focuses in facilitating rather than regulating, and therefore NEP 2020 envisions an India-centric education. That's why the word national education policy, an India-centric education system that contributes directly to transforming our national education system into an equivalent and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all. Therefore, you can see the focus here is an India-centric education policy. So you'll find that the Indian knowledge system is one of the focuses as we move forward. And this NEP 2020 is India-centric education policy, and primarily intended directly transforming our nation into that is a very high state of development, or for example becoming a superpower, into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society. The whole focus is to develop a high, vibrant, equitable means available to everyone, and a vibrant knowledge society by affording high quality education to all. So it's inclusivity, equitability, and quality are the major keywords that determines. And the beauty of this policy had been, apart from the extensive consultation, even after evolving a draft stage, the draft was made available to the entire population, and more than 2 lakh different comments were received across the country on the draft education policy, and these were taken care of before finalization, which means that one of the important feature of NEP 2020 has been that this has just not come very suddenly. It has taken years of consultation process, deliberations, and even after the draft stage, it was open. The draft was open to the society to make comments on the draft, and more than 2 lakh comments were received, which were given due consideration, which means that it's an extensively debated the policy, which means it involves a larger sections of the society into formulating this. Now its key features are, it aims to bring about transformational reforms in education. It's not an incremental. Now you can see that compared to the previous policies, which only touched up some aspect of it. For example, they gave regulatory authority AICT as a statutory status, etc., etc. A lot of private education came into technical private institutions came in. All they were the reason of that 1986 policy. But this is much more, because it aims at not an incremental change or incremental reform in our education system. It aims at transformational reforms, fundamental rethink, and therefore say its objective is much more sort of ambitious compared to an incremental improvements here and there in education system. So therefore its key features are, it aims at transformational reforms, which means that many unexpected policies and practices have been proposed in it, which actually could not have been thought of it earlier. So it's transformational in nature. That means a major rethink over what we were doing earlier, a very major rethink. Then it aims to make higher education system holistic. That means when you look at education, not merely driven by a domain knowledge specific curriculum. Holistic is in terms of, in totality, in knowledge, skill, and attitude or values. And therefore, when you look at education holistically, three components of holistic education are the knowledge that we give, the skills that we impart, and the value system, attitude and the value system that you have, which means that the objective of education is not only giving domain knowledge, but also capacity to apply that knowledge to solve the problems of the society, and also nurturing good human beings, and therefore who are knowledgeable, who are skilled, and have the values and ethics of being good human being. And that's the meaning of holistic education. And in the process, one of the very fundamental major change that has taken place in this policy is the flexibility. In fact, many a times our higher education system was plagued by inflexibility. I mean, once a university, particularly the affiliating university, gives a syllabus, and even if it's become outdated, will take years before it can be even rectified, and again very rigid. Once a syllabus is given, entire all cross sections of the institutions would have to follow that inflexible curriculum. And therefore, apart from being holistic, another key feature of this policy is flexibility. It has enormous degree of flexibility, and therefore, when we come to the challenges, we would perhaps notice that sometimes the flexibility is rather too much, which means that it might even give some implementation difficulties, because there are even limits to flexibility, and therefore, while implementing it, we have to be very cautious. But then the keyword here is flexibility, and third important keyword here is multidisciplinarity. Now, multidisciplinarity means that standalone institutions which were only giving a specialized in a knowledge in a particular field have to now widen their scope and have a greater focus on bringing universities which are multidisciplinarity in nature, rather than standalone institutions such as IIT or IIM or NEP or IIIT. These institutions are not are actually are domain specific. Information technology or technology, although engineering technology by definition is multidisciplinary, but then within that, greater degree of multidisciplinarity within engineering technology. And therefore, these three keywords will define the basic changes. Its holistic looks at developing the individual as a whole, knowledgeable, skilled, and value driven, a good human being. That's the meaning of holistic. Flexibility is that bring in an element of flexibility so that in the same size doesn't fit in all. Depending upon the learner needs, learner interest, we can evolve a curriculum, framework, or course structure which is flexible in nature. And third is focus should be that even an engineer must study non-engineering subjects. Maybe, in fact, in IIT Kharagpur, when I studied in 1962, we did have all these features. For example, throughout every semester, we had a course on humanities and social sciences. So I studied as an engineering graduate, studying mechanical engineering, with a course on economics, sociology, psychology, principles of government, constitution, philosophy. The whole idea was that, and this is what is in fact intended here. Real IITs were doing it. Every IIT has a department of humanities and social sciences. But this is means that multidisciplinarity is that too much focus on a single discipline has to go. And therefore, even universities, for example, you would notice that based on perhaps this, even IIT Kharagpur is now going to have a medical college. Because, the whole idea is that earlier the concept that engineering and medical are two different streams. And after 10+2, you decide whether you want to become an engineer or a doctor, as if there is nothing in common between medicine and technology. Whereas the fact remains that nearly now 70% of the surgical surgeries and are technology driven, robotics and so on, robotics driven surgery, in AI driven. So therefore, engineering and medicine have so much commonality, so that a person is studying engineering must also have some input of medical sciences or life sciences or biotechnology and social sciences. And that's the meaning of multidisciplinarity. Not too much over obsessed with a deep subject, only more and more of mechanical engineering, and ignoring everything else. So therefore, this is the key feature. And then it aims to provide multiple pathways to learning. That's another very powerful thing. There's not only one way of acquiring a degree. It says there are multiple ways to acquire the degree involving both formal and non-formal modes, which means that the online education or part-time education, which was earlier not considered. For example, in engineering, the online education was not recognized at all. And therefore, sometimes the distance education was given a relatively low kind of an esteem value, because if you're done a course on distance learning mode, perhaps people would not give it so much attention as a quality tag as one would give it for. So therefore, another very important feature is that identifying multiplicity of paths depending upon the circumstances and the needs of the learner, both involving formal and non-formal modes. And therefore, that's indeed is a very powerful understanding of this. Then it also says that the purpose of higher education should go much beyond employability. As I said, that's what it's India-centric. Well, employability is an important aspect in training our people, but then employment need not necessarily be for a living. It could be for serving a society, serving the government, and therefore the purpose here is the education goes much beyond employability to developing a holistic individual. I mean, almost like nation building people who can contribute to powerful nation building, holistic individual capable of constructive public engagement and productive contribution to the society. And therefore, when we develop these people, not simply for making a living, the intention is to develop a total person, a holistic person, a total quality person who is capable of constructive public engagement and productive contribution to the society, and not much beyond employment. And therefore, this policy proposes to end fragmentation of education by transforming higher education into large multidisciplinary knowledge hubs with large number of students. Therefore, what it's saying that and the knowledge hub means that participative institutions, which instead of competing with each other, could actually be collaborating. And therefore, there are a number of initiatives when I come to the more specifics of this initiative, so that creating knowledge hubs where institutions collaborate with each other and come forward with this. Now, some major transformational change that this policy proposes are as follows. It's a modular policy with a lot of flexibility with exits and entry. Now, this is something which is unheard of earlier. For example, almost any student at his will can choose to exit from the course either permanently or temporarily and enter again. So multiple exit and entry policy is, therefore it's a module. You clear certain modules of coursework, and if you feel that you need to change this, or in fact if you feel that after first year of engineering you realize that it's not your cup of tea, you don't have the kind of attitudes or aptitude for studying that kind of subject, the best in you cannot come out if you take that, there is a possibility of exit with something. Now, earlier, even engineering, if you look at the inflexibility, was that if somebody leaves a BTech degree in the final year without completing all the requirements, a person would leave after 4 years or after 4 years without anything. And it sometimes can be very traumatic. In the flexibility of this policy, it's possible for a person to exit after a year or 2 years with a, if you exit after a year, you get a certificate of whatever you studied. After 2 years, you may get a diploma. After 3 years, you may get a degree. After 4 years, you get an honors degree, or that kind of flexibility. And therefore, as a result, one very major transformational change which earlier policies didn't bring in is that it's modular in character. You build educational modules one over the other, and you have the flexibility of exit and entry. While it's a good policy, but then it actually can cut both ways. If a person, indirectly what it means is that it's a student-centric in the sense that if a person does not enjoy studying in that subject and he leaves, so therefore enrollments can come down, he goes and elsewhere. But then there is a possibility of entry. Somebody can directly enter in second year or third year. And therefore, this is one such feature which is modular in character with enormous flexibility of exit and entry, which have to be very carefully managed. if the exit and entry becomes uncontrolled, anybody leaving and coming and going, it can cause problem. That's why the challenges in implementation without eroding the basic purpose for which this policy is created in developing a total human being. Then the second important feature that this policy prescribes is the academic bank of credits and the credit transfers, which means that this makes this policy almost global in nature, in the sense that a person does not have to necessarily study at the same institution to qualify for a degree in BTech or BA or BSc or MBA or whatever. It's possible for a person to earn some credits at one institution, then take some courses elsewhere in the country or even beyond the country and accumulate those credits, because this concept of academic bank of credits is already operational now. This policy has been implemented, and an individual can open an academic bank account where you keep on adding on to the credits that you are earning from whichever sources. And once you're able to earn the required credits from which makes you eligible for a BTech degree, you will then get a BTech degree, although you need not do all the courses from the same place, because those credits that you do elsewhere in some other institution can be transferred to count towards your own degree or as a credit. So it's a credit driven with choice-based credits that you take courses that you feel are relevant, and choice-based credits taken from anywhere can add on to this. Now that's a policy. Again, it has been taken with very carefully. For example, it makes it, and therefore now fortunately there is now a policy how this academic bank of credits is to be implemented. In fact, I was chairman of a committee appointed by the Ministry of Education, which had chairman AICT as a member and some 7 central university vice chancellor members, where we evolved what's the academic bank of credits, the credit transfer framework, national policy for credit transfer framework. That means there are certain guidelines how these credits are to be transferred, and therefore, as a result, it's possible for a person to take some courses, let's say 50% courses from an institution where you take the major degree, where you got an admission, but the remaining 40% courses you can take from anywhere else. And for that, from which place to take, which universities, which institution, they will call for an MOU between that, because you can control which, because after all, the negative point here is a person may take courses from a very low quality institution and transfer it to your college of a high quality institution and becomes eligible for a degree. So there are enormous clear-cut guidelines and policy framework which is already in place now. UGC has already notified this, and therefore, as a result, this academic bank of credits or credit transfer enables for a person to take credits elsewhere within the country and even outside. That means somebody can take and therefore this will facilitate collaboration between global level collaborations. A person, for example, your students can take a semester in some other universities, complete some coursework, bring it back, and those credits done in those places will count towards his graduation. This indeed is another very powerful, fundamental, unthinkable change that this policy has brought in. But then once again, each one of them, as even philosophically, any transformational change, a fundamental rethink, calls for a very cautious implementation. There are greater risks associated with implementing it if you are casual in implementing it, because one of the negative point of here to a person, if you are not able to deliver quality education in your own institution, the fellow will go elsewhere, earn some credit, and bring it back to you. So you have a tendency, you have a possibly the risk of losing your students even after some 3rd year, 4th year, because that is not going to come in his way. He can complete his degree by your credits he earns from your place, and if he doesn't enjoy working in your institution, he can complete the remaining credits elsewhere, because the exit and entry policy and the transfer of credit permits it to do so. So it brings a greater onus on the institutions to bring in a greater delight amongst the students, so that they remain captive or loyal to your institution, and therefore it can cut both ways. That's why I'm saying it's a very cautious implementation. Then another very important point it brings out a single higher education council of India. This is actually not yet implemented, but perhaps the process is on. What it actually says, again, it's a fundamental change. Earlier, you had different kinds of regulating bodies. You have AICT, you have UGC, you have National Council of Teacher Education, pharmacy councils, and whatever that you have. It actually combines and looks at a single level regulator at a national level. That's why it's a national policy. At a national level, there's a single regulator, and which would be called as Higher Education Council of India or Commission of India or whatever. I'm not, and therefore this is not yet settled. We'll get to know what would be eventually called. It requires a major change in the parliament. I think the bill is already being talked about. So the philosophy here would be that under that single regulator, in order to have greater coordination amongst the regulating authorities, otherwise what was happening, the need for this you can see, for example, architecture. There's a Council of Architecture, CAO, which governs the education in architecture, admissions, admission tests, and all that. You have AICT, which also talks about architecture, also comes under the AICT. You have clearly now two agencies. AICT is also concerned about architecture, and Council of Architecture is also concerned about architecture. And there can be difficulties. There can be problems of the domain which comes under their domain, which comes under. Similarly, in pharmacy, you have Pharmacy Council of India. Pharmacy also comes under the ICT, and therefore those kinds of duplication of the domain issues, they would, in fact, coming in the way of regulating effectively, unambiguously, will be done away with by having a single higher education council at the national level. And in order to give a specialist attention, there will be 4 verticals under that higher education council. It will be National Higher Education regulatory council, which will give the regulations, for example, in terms of approvals and all that is done. National Accreditation Council, all the accreditations, NAC, NBA, and all that goes with it, will actually would have the all accreditation process will come under one vertical called NEP. Right now, you have NERP, you have NAC, you have NERP, you have NBA, and maybe other private agencies doing this. National Education Council, all regulating agencies would come under this vertical, so that there will be greater coordination amongst them. Then Higher Education General Council, which actually would grant council, which actually the grant part, giving money, funding the institution like UGC does. UGC ka naam hi UGC, University Grants Commission. AICT also gives grant, but then same AICT talks of approvals, talks of accreditations through NBA, talks of giving grants, etc., etc. And here, Higher Education Grants Commission, Council would it exclusively only in terms of grants, and then the General Education Council will be setting standards and curriculum framework. Therefore, these 4 verticals dealing with the regulation, accreditation, grants, and setting standards by way of curriculum, all 4 verticals would be coming under the overall umbrella organizations called Higher Education Council of India, which is expected that the regulation would be more effectively coordinated, and the difficulties and problems of conflict of domain area amongst the existing multiple regulatory bodies would actually would be over. This is yet to be established. Academic Bank of Credit is already operational. Modular exit entry policy is already operational. HECI is yet to be. I'm also giving the status of the progress happening, and it is yet to come into picture. But then I think the bill is almost ready to be introduced in the parliament, and the existing statutory bodies would have to be wound up also. For example, AICT or UGC, etc., will be subsumed into this. And then another very powerful, this policy focuses on research. Earlier policies did not give so much attention on research. It actually has already created what's called NRF, National Research Foundation, which would mean that, and this again is a very powerful transformational change. It will be possible because currently the general feeling is there are existing government funding agencies such as DST, DBT, UGC are perhaps more easily, for reasons best known, and maybe some of them may be valid, feel comfortable in funding government-funded institutions. But the kind of funding coming, research project funded by these government agencies to private institutions is not that extensive as one would expect. Now, therefore, one beautiful feature of this National Research Foundation would be that the research foundation would be funding good quality research proposals based purely on the quality of the proposal, irrespective of whether this proposal has come from the government funded institution or whether that proposal has come from the privately owned institution. And therefore, the distinction between the government and the privately owned institutions would vanish. The focus would be on the quality of the idea and the research, and the eminence of the research proposer, the PI, the principal investigator. And therefore, the National Research Foundation would be one such body which would have an opportunity to private institutions to acquiring research funding without having to carry the tag of being a private institution, provided the idea is brilliant and the person who is developing that project proposal is very capable, which would mean that this National Research Foundation, and I think the initial seed money of some 70,000 crores of rupees or so as initial seed money, this indeed would give a major fillip to the quality of research in private institutions, because right now the amount of money private institutions or universities spend on research is very limited, because from the tuition fee, how much money can you divert to research, which requires huge money. And hopefully the National Research Foundation would generate quality research proposals from eminent people, and the equal opportunity of getting funded irrespective of whether you belong to a government institution or a private institution. This indeed, to my mind, is a very powerful new initiative. Then all programs, earlier BTech was anyway a 4-year program, but now all degree programs, including BTech was 4 year, now BA will be 4 year, BSc would be 4 year, BCom would be 4 year. And perhaps what it would give, one may wonder, why is it so? One additional advantage that you have from the 4-year program, because there'll be better global acceptability of the degrees from India, because as you know, our BCom, BSc, BA degree are 3 years degrees. These are not accepted in US, because US only accepts for master's degrees which are 4-year degrees. Because in US, all degrees are 4-year degrees, whether it's a BA or BTech. They call it BS. In fact, BTech, they call it BS, Bachelor of Science. And therefore, because of the 4 years degree in all programs, one positive value of this would be that our degrees would be accepted for higher education or for employment purposes across the world, because it links up the global practices by having 4-year degree at bachelor's level. It also would then have 1-year master's degree instead of, and it eliminates the need for requiring MPhil. If you can directly now it's a beautiful, in order to encourage brilliant people to go in for research directly, earlier they had to do either MPhil or do MTech and then do PhD. Now it's possible for a brilliant BTech degree holder to directly enroll into PhD program. And therefore, if you've done a 4-year, after 4 years BTech program or a 4-year BA program or BSc program or BCom program, a brilliant scholar can go in for a direct admission to PhD, which again is a very, and therefore now would say that, okay, these are the features. What impact would it have on education? Now, one impact on this education would be is more flexible. The amount of flexibility that institutions were looking for, fortunately, this policy provides all possible flexibility that you have. It's modular in character, so that you don't have to treat it as in a single block. The entire curriculum and entire education is divided into a number of modules, and after completing a module, you have a reason to you can go in for the second module, third module, or you can take it off and do the second module after a while, and therefore that hop off, hop on feature provides you. Third important feature impact it will have on quality of education will be the mode of learning would be blended mode of learning, which means that earlier online education was really not in vogue. But now it's realized that online education can perhaps enhance the reach and the gross enrollment ratio, because a brilliant faculty member who may not otherwise be available to a college located in a remote area, at least now with 40% of the courses and lectures can be online, and 60% can be offline, 40% can be online, which means that that opportunity of getting the lectures delivered by the best in the country or even beyond through online mode, so that the opportunity of people from not advantageously located institutions would now have an opportunity to get lectures delivered from the best of the society in an online mode, because they may not be available offline, but they are available in online mode. And therefore, fortunately, the focus now is blended mode of learning. And in order to give the guidelines, it's now possible for every institution, even engineering education, 40% courses can be online and 60% can be offline. That's the limit. Up to 40% you can go in for. This actually would also reduce the need for the full-time faculty to be employed by an institution, because if only 60% courses have to be offline, then the remaining 40% online courses can be delivered by your own people or anybody from elsewhere. So therefore, even the faculty mix-up would be blended mode, a mix of regular and part-time or distance learning mode faculty members. Another important impact it would have on it, education would become collaborative. For example, as you know, because of the academic bank of credits, it will be possible to collaborate with your competitors. For example, how we can collaborate with the competitors would be that suppose your students want to take some course for which you don't have a faculty. Instead of hiring a faculty in your own institution, because he or she may not have adequate workload for the whole year, now this person takes a course in some other institution, either offline or online mode, and then gets this transfer to your his credit that he has earned. So you might have an opportunity to collaborate with your competitor. In the same manner, your competitor may ask their students to take courses in which you are strong, and therefore, as a result, in a collaborative mode, institutions would become it will be win-win situation. Their own competence can be shared by their competitors, and competitors' strength can be shared by the person, and therefore one is hoping that technical education or any education will become more collaborative, where institutions amongst themselves would have MOUs, and it's holistic and singular regulators I already talked about. Another feature of this, the education would be value-based. That means the good human being or a good citizen who is able to make positive contribution to the society is an integral part of the education system. And therefore, the human values and professional ethics course, which I had introduced when I was the Vice Chancellor of UP Technical University then as a compulsory audit course. Now it's a compulsory course across the country. In fact, AICT itself has made it now, but then it's incorporated even in the quality of education, that the education must be value-based. Obviously, because any education which does not incorporate good human being makes him a good human being. Those knowledge and skills that people acquire, particularly in the management and technical education system, these skills can be used in an unscrupulous manner, and therefore all that you see in the name of so much of hacking, phishing, cyber crimes, perhaps are the people know the skills, IT, but perhaps the value has taken a backseat, and therefore it's expected that the education system, in order to generate produce good human being, must be value-based and relevant to the industry and societal needs. That means any education which is not relevant to the society, not relevant to the industry, is not going to contribute to the national development. And therefore, hopefully, now colleges and institutions and universities will be able to evolve a curriculum which is more relevant, because you can very frequently update your own curriculum, and that I'm sure that the focus on more and more universities coming in, and less eventually, by I think within 15 years or so, the affiliating concept of the institution, like you're affiliated to AKTU or somebody, this concept would vanish. In fact, there'll be another very major change. Affiliated universities would become either non-existent, and they'll cut down the size. Instead of having any number, where 600, 700, 800 institutions, and the university is not able to give that attention, there would be a limit of not more than 200 and 250 or institutions affiliated to a university. And therefore, as a result, then it also brings out the concept of a very important, a concept of research universities, teaching universities, and autonomous colleges. So autonomous colleges, that means a college, and therefore a lot of focus is now happening. I know in many South universities, colleges are aspiring to become autonomous. The moment you become an autonomous college, you would have a greater flexibility of curriculum revision, examination paper, question evaluation, and many times the delays and the inflexibility of an affiliating university actually would give it. So therefore, a lot of autonomous colleges will come up, and then teaching universities. That means the primary function of that university will be teaching, and therefore, as a result, and then research universities would have a research as an important component in addition to teaching, and therefore it's expected that the kind of institutions that will come up would belong to these three categories: the research university, teaching university, and autonomous colleges. Because right now, maybe universities like IIT, IIC Bangalore, and central universities might have research component. Many of the institutions which are affiliated colleges, if they become university, their major focus may remain teaching universities, and therefore these are the kind of things that happen. Then another very major impact is transformation change. That giving is teaching in your mother tongue to empower students wherever. Indeed, this has already been implemented. AICT has already implemented about 2 years back, or about 1 year back, where in 8 Indian languages, and this is going to become more and more. Already there are additional admissions in BTech with extra seats if the college is willing to offer admissions, training throughout the 4 years in mother tongue, in Hindi, maybe in Tamil, in Odia, in Bengali, and like that. There are 8 Indian languages already implemented, and the idea is to increase it to 11. And not only simply permitted, the AICT is doing a great job in permitting, translating, encouraging faculty members of an institution to write down original books in their mother tongue where they feel comfortable. And there are very strong incentives given to the people who volunteer to write original books in the mother tongue or regional languages. Very strong incentives being given, and also using technology, language technologies, to translate very good books, popular books into the in the regional languages. So that's another very major earlier, and this is going to have a major impact, because even, for example, and this I could realize, and fortunately, I was also the chairman of the AICT committee, which actually gave recommendations to make technical education in regional languages. And maybe within a year of that, committee report, this has now been implemented. And I think even in your neighborhood in NCR, there are a couple of engineering colleges affiliated to AKTU who already started offering a BTech computer science course in Hindi and other thing. And these are additional seats that are given. And the reason for that was very simple. In some of the poorly located, affiliated colleges, one of the reasons why students were not doing so well, because both students and teachers, their capacity to express themselves in English is very severely limited. They're otherwise brilliant people. They're very intelligent native people, but because they're not able to understand English language, their capacity to learn was severely limited. And That's why they could not understand what's happening. The lectures could not be understood. They cannot write a good, they know the answer, but they can't express it in English. Similarly, many teachers can't express very effectively in English. So why choose a medium where neither the teacher nor the students feel comfortable in understanding? The whole idea is to improve our capacity to learn. And therefore, in order to facilitate, and my contention since I was chairman of this committee, I hope that if people adopt this, particularly poorly located institutions in remote areas where students have very poor understanding of the English, because English is not our mother tongue. It's not our native language, but they're brilliant people, and one hopes that the employability of students would improve if, but one at the same time, there has to be to overcome a mindset. A general mindset is that if you really want to become employable, you must study in English. So there has to be some degree of overcoming that mental roadblock that only English can give you employability, and mother tongue, if you have studied in Hindi or Marathi or Gujarati or Tamil or Bengali, you perhaps, and in fact our recommendations were, in order to remove this, I don't know whether this, of course, states come into picture there. We had suggested in our recommendation that in order to remove this taboo of only studying in English and encouraging students to learning engineering and technology in their own mother tongue, because one important feature you would notice of a developed world, and I can say without loss of generality, look at any developed country, America, Canada, Europe, although it is a European Union, there are 27 countries in Europe, but each country gives education right up to PhD level in their own language. French is give engineering education in French, German give in German language, Italians give in Italian language. So all developed countries give education in their own mother tongue. Chinese given in Chinese language, Japanese given Japanese language, and therefore, if you really want to aspire to be a developed nation, first thing that you have to understand is remove this taboo of only studying English, because in general, all developed countries give education in their own mother tongue. Of course, the only difference here will be they have one mother tongue, like German, French, Italian, English. We have so many mother tongues. So therefore, problems of diversity would be there. Therefore, this is relatively more difficult to implement, but I'm sure where there is a will, there is a way. And therefore, as a result, this is a very major fundamental change that has taken place in this system. Then we want our education system to be globally respected. And therefore, the major focus should be on accreditation. Accreditation, and a credible accreditation. That means accreditation which has respect globally, is globally accepted. And people know that once some accreditation agency has given you a particular accreditation certificate, this actually symbolizes or guarantees your quality. And therefore, now focus is more that the Indian education system must acquire global respectability through going in for more and more credible, reliable, respected accreditation process. Although we have now processes of NEC and NBA, and of course NEC is a ranking, and then there are QS, iGauge. These are grades that are given. There are multiple agencies, but very few institutions have gone in for accreditation. As you know, even in the NEP, maybe that the total number of people participate in all categories are about 1,000. Maybe some 250 universities participate in NEP ranking, and therefore more and more institutions should acquire greater degree of respect through going in for credible accreditation agency. And therefore, the idea is to make so if somebody gets a degree from India, this degree is straightway accepted across the globe. Right now, it's not happening. For example, in Singapore, only degrees given by IIT system are taken at par value. Maybe in America, if you have a degree from IIT, but then if you have not obtained your degree from a more visible or famous university in India, a person getting a degree from here would have to perhaps take an additional course from their additional degree or certificate or some makeup courses. The idea is that our degree would be accepted across the globe. This is the spirit, and the key word for here is when you focus on quality and demonstrate that quality through a good accreditation grade from a credible accreditation agency. I'm using the word credible accreditation agencies where nobody will doubt the grades that one gets. Then another very powerful, in fact, it almost means enormous spirit. In 4 words, it almost tells you how we are going to manage this institution. The entire education system, be it private or government, must be faculty driven. That means the entire management of the technical education system in the context of AICT and elsewhere, faculty driven. It's a faculty right from top to bottom, which are involved in designing, developing, delivering, monitoring, controlling. So the entire education system management is faculty driven, but student oriented. That means the 2 major stakeholders of an education system are the students, who are the very purpose for our existence, and faculty, who is the soul of an institution. And therefore, it's expected that the entire faculty, the entire management of an organization would be faculty driven, where non-faculty would not have a major role in managing the institution, but student centric. It's not that faculty should only teach what they want to teach rather than what they should teach. So focus from student centricity would never be lost. So teach what is relevant to the students to make him a good human being, knowledgeable and skilled, but the faculty would have the empowerment to do so. And therefore, in a nutshell, this speaks of the kind of management values that you would have. It'd be faculty driven and student oriented. Then another very important thing is a part of multidisciplinarity, very liberal with arts and culture inputs. Now it's possible now with a person doing a course on BTech in mechanical engineering, gets a course on a 3-credit course in music, or in culture, or dramatics, or art, or philosophy, or social sciences. And that's the idea again is to make a good human being. And therefore, apart from, because as an engineer, you are a person first and then technical hand later on, you're not a robot. And therefore, as a result, you're dealing with people. And the whole idea is enrich the technical education with inputs from culture and liberal arts and social sciences. And choice-based academic bank of credits would actually facilitate in creating a very powerful framework, which I've talked about. Now, this will be impact on education. What will be the impact of national education policy on research? As I said, that private universities particularly are not able to give as much funding required for doing a good quality research, because a research has to be richly funded. Unfortunately, 80 to 90% of our funding of educational institutions for the purpose of research come from government agencies. Indian industry has not started funding research in a big way. In fact, as compared to the other country, for example, in Japan, is the other way around. About 80 to 90% of the research funding come from industry, projects sponsored by industry, and the government funding may be only 10%. In India, 90% of the research funding comes from the government sources, and maybe 5 to 10%, if at all, if that's a number, comes from industries. And therefore, as a result, private institutions are not at a level playing field as compared to some richly funded institutions such as IITs and IISc Bangalore, and maybe other government funded. Because as I mentioned in opening remark, that unfortunately, the mindset towards private institutions or private universities by the government funding agencies is not very positive. At times, they would perhaps be hesitant to give a huge grant because perhaps there may be concerns about the transparency, utilization of funds, or whatever. Now, this National Research Foundation, in fact, is a great boon to all private institutions to aspire for funding from this source in a big way, provided your research quality proposal is a great quality, because that means now, and we are almost going through we have almost, I must say, that's how the research funding in America is done. In US, the funding is given for research purposes, not because of the name of an institution. It's on the quality of the research proposal and the caliber of the person who's making a research proposal as a principal investigator. And therefore, it would perhaps encourage uh, uh, talented faculty members to join private institutions, because now they would be possibly expecting a good research funding coming from National Research Foundation, though they are in the private institution. And therefore, to my mind, the of course, I'll come to the challenges of implementation later. I'm first giving its basic features. The challenges is if this mindset of doing away with this ownership, whether government or a private institution, all would be gauged on the basis of the quality of the institution, quality of the progress and performance of that institution, and doing away with the tag of government versus private. And therefore, it perhaps is a very major game changer in funding research across the country, because all said and done, the funding of the research in the country is a very, very low level. For example, I think the total research, the percentage of the budget a company spends on research, or in a university spends on research, is just a very small fraction, maybe 1% or 2%. 1 to 2% of their budget they may, in fact, whereas with this additional funding potential available, and they're already at PhD level, it has already started through, but then it has remained confined in the Prime Minister's research fellowships. We have come to the next. So the impact of the national education policy and research would be that one would be institutions, both government and private, on the basis of quality of research proposal and the caliber of the researcher, would be able to attract great research funding irrespective of their form of ownership. This is a major change. The second would be the focus of research will become socially relevant. There is no point taking a research project which only extends the research done by foreign professors. In fact, this was a major issue that normally people in India, because they can publish a paper in those international journals, if the research proposal is topical to a developed country. Now, this is where one has to understand, if you really want to become a great country, you don't have to, and it's unfortunate at this point in time that, and the institutions themselves are responsible for it, that if there's a great research paper of high caliber, you don't send it for publishing in Indian journal. You'll see, let it go to the Scopus Index, category A, B, D, C, A plus star. We actually are doing great research work here, even in our IIT system. But most of this is published in foreign journals, whereas our Indian journal quality is low, because when a paper is of a relatively lower quality, or it gets rejected from a good quality journal, then only we think of doing it, sending to this practice. We must have pride in our own journals, unless we researchers enrich the quality of our own Indian journals. So therefore, make research proposals which are socially relevant, instead of focusing and publishing only in top-notch foreign journals, and you don't have access to them unless you. I mean, in fact, even online journals of, let's say, some of the top publishers is very, very expensive. So focus on research will become socially relevant. Problems of the society, and fortunately, India is full of problems. And if we make research proposals which are relevant in solving the problems of society in a neighborhood, improves the quality of life of people, I'm sure even more respect will come to research proposals, research programs or research degrees, because this research has solved a very important social problem. And therefore, focus of research should be make research more socially relevant. Then, in order to attract the best brains to research, right now, in fact, this is debatable whether the best people would opt for research as a first choice. In order to, and unless best brains go for research, it's an intellectual input. Unless best brains are attracted towards research, we cannot go do good quality research. And therefore, in order to attract best brains to do research, some initiatives which are already in place, is, let's say, PMRF, it's already in place, Prime Minister's Research Fellowships. The Prime Minister's Research Fellowship or National Doctoral Fellowships, National Postdoctoral Fellowships are some of the schemes where, for example, in Prime Minister Research Fellowship, it's a very liberal approach. For example, maybe you're aware, actually in IIT Delhi, when I take a course in, as you know, that I also teach in IIT Delhi as an online professor, my teaching assistant is a PMRF fellow. I mean, directly after BTech, you can enroll for PhD under PMRF if you're a brilliant scholar. But in order to attract brilliant people to do research for PhD level, the Prime Minister's Research Fellowship scheme is so attractive. For example, just to give an idea, right now, and unless it has been further moved up, as a PMRF fellow pursuing PhD in IIT, you get a monthly scholarship of 70,000 rupees per month. 70,000 rupees per month as a PhD scholarship, which many institutions may not be paying him as the salary even after doing MTech or PhD. And therefore, as a result, if a brilliant person after BTech can get into a Prime Minister's Research Fellowship in pursuing a full-time PhD degree by getting 70,000 rupees per month as fellowship for 5 years, it's a remarkable incentive. And as I mentioned, that the 70,000 crores of the seed fund is more and more needs to be done. And therefore, one is expecting that under this policy, these new initiatives to boost up research would perhaps increase the quality of research scholars. Because if some scholar after BTech can directly get a PhD fellowship of 70,000 rupees per month for 5 years, but right now this scheme is confined only in IITs. That means a scholar may be from any institution, any private institution, but the scholarship is available under PMRF only to the IIT system. Perhaps we need to enlarge it, go beyond, but then of course quality of institutions have to be kept in mind. It can't be given everywhere because the money involved is so huge in funding. There has to be an assured return on the quality of research, and therefore this is a very powerful impact. Then collaboration with other institutions in industry to make it multidisciplinary and outcome based. Now, research to become multidisciplinary and outcome based is because, as you know, a greater opportunity to do more effective research, more socially relevant research will come if people from two different backgrounds come together to guide research. Because a socially relevant research would not be so specifically, you don't dig deeper into subspecialization, super specialization. You look into the problems. If solving a social problem is an objective of conducting good quality research, a social problem may have technical dimensions, may have economic dimensions, may have social dimensions, may have economic dimensions, and may have the resource implications. Hence, collaborating, doing research with taking one guide from mechanical engineering, another from maybe from management, another from maybe law, because new research programs, for example, in many PhD programs dealing with IPR, may require a legal angle, may require a technical angle. So therefore, the research guide could be, one could be from law, another person could be from engineering, or could be from management and engineering, maybe from computer science and law, like cyber laws. And therefore, this kind of flexibility is now possible to have research guides belonging to different background, and maybe from industry, one guide from industry, another guide from institution. So therefore, a greater collaboration with other institutions, taking a guide from other institution, from industry, and multidisciplinary, taking guides from other background. That means we should actually have a kind of a complementarity of supervision of research. Instead of taking both the guides from the same area, if you take guides who are complementing each other's knowledge base, they perhaps can contribute a more. And I must say that greater research potential now lies on taking research problems which are multidisciplinary in nature. Too much domain-specific focus on research, digging deeper and deeper and deeper, erodes the possibility of coming out something out of box. It has already been super saturated in that area. But the moment two different disciplines join together, the kind of having a brilliant new idea of conducting a novel research becomes more and more. And since it has to be outcome based, as an outcome based, there must be a definite outcome. If your research, it becomes socially relevant, it solves the problems of industry, it solves the problems of society. And in order to deliver outcome based research, institutions would have to collaborate with industry, with another institutions. Guides have to collaborate. Departments, two different departments, same college might have to collaborate. And therefore, instead of only focusing that the guide has to be from the same department, which is happening now, the guide can be from two different departments because it brings complementarity, and the research would be far more powerful. Then new innovative ideas, creativity starts. The policy, this policy has very major focus on entrepreneurship, in creativity, innovation, startups. It's already now going in a big way. There are many institutions are now focusing on a BTech people. BTech students are given BTech projects which are innovative in nature, which are research driven, research oriented, eventually may lead up to the BTech degree holder, instead of looking for a job, perhaps may go in for starting his own startup. And therefore, this focus on innovation, creativity and startup and entrepreneurship is very new. That means these students who are studying need not necessarily be trained for getting a job. They could be trained for becoming a job provider, employer, and this can happen right after BTech. That means the idea of research gets incorporated right at the BTech stage, at the project stage, by giving a research-driven, innovative research project involving maybe teamwork. And maybe this team then is able to acquire an IPR and start their own startup. This is a very powerful. Then the training on patents and IPR to be in focus. Right now, in the past, our research was focused mainly on publications. Now, patents, intellectual property right, copyright, design patents, GI tag, all these are becoming relevant. And therefore, more and more institutions are now being encouraged to develop an intellectual property right by going in for patenting an idea or a new design or a new software, or going for copyright. And therefore, as a result, this training of IPR laws, how to go ahead filing patents, etc., is an important component. And a lot of colleges and universities are now creating a facilitating cell of patent attorneys who are able to guide how to file a patent, how to apply for a patent or a copyright or whatever, or even directly supporting institutions, supporting a student or a faculty to pay for filing patents, both Indian and foreign patents. And as I mentioned, directly after BTech, brilliant minds may go in. Now, therefore, right now, what's happening? The best brilliant minds do not even get attracted to do MTech, because they know that we have not made MTech and PhD as a career option in industry. Industry does, when placing, when hiring people, they might not give any special advantage in hiring an MTech or a PhD over a BTech. And the very person will say, why would I spend 2 years in doing MTech if I get the same advantage? There's no special purpose. Now, in doing so, brilliant minds do not directly go for PhD or MTech. MTech is not, in fact, going to be 1 year now. Hopefully, more people go for MTech in 1 year MTech. And this flexibility, you do 1 year MTech and then thesis can be done, after the job. Because a lot of people after BTech sit in civil services, so they might enroll for a year, do the coursework during while you're preparing for a civil services or engineering services. You get selected, join there and complete your thesis while you're in a private mode. So that degree of flexibility is right now best brain. Suppose a person who after BTech directly gets into Prime Minister's Research Fellowship, and say case the lady who is my teaching assistant in IT Delhi, she had perhaps a BTech degree from RIT Jamshedpur, which is now NIT Jamshedpur, and directly after BTech, 70,000 rupees per month is a fellowship. One would expect that if we make research attractive, the quality of students pursuing PhD would go in a very, very big way. So this is how the education policy would impact on the quality and funding of the research proposal. Then the third aspect of it is what impact would it have on the industry. So I'm talking about the impact, and later on I'll talk about the challenges in implementation. Impact on industry would be, since it's flexible learning interspersed with experience, it's possible for a person to take 2 years of BTech studies, get out with a diploma, do some experience in industry, come back again and pursue the remaining, because these are modular credits to be added on to it. So the learning would become more flexible and not sequential without any. So interspersed with you learn, practice, again learn, again practice, and therefore the impact on industry, the people from industry can come back for teaching, for research, and the research can be now, you can take research courses on online basis. More flexibility exists, and therefore it is expected that because of flexible learning, the people working in industry would be able to acquire additional higher degree in the process of flexible learning. Interface with, then online learning will facilitate masters and doctoral programs or LDPs in lifelong learning. Since the focus of national education policy and lifelong learning, and that's why you have this FDC, the Faculty Development Center, the AICT, where I'm under whose auspices I'm delivering this lecture. Since online is now not a taboo, the online learning would facilitate people from industry to enroll for masters and doctoral programs in completing certificate courses in MDPs, management development programs, executive development programs, lifelong learning, and therefore the quality of manpower, and it's important because particularly in technical education, technical context, although in general, the knowledge doubles every 2 years. And therefore, whatever a person might have studied when he did MTech or BTech or even PhD, maybe 10 years back, what was taught, or 5 years back, what was taught in BTech, MTech, or even a PhD project becomes, out of date. Such a fast rate at which knowledge is coming, so it's become imperative for people practicing in industry to renew their knowledge, to update their knowledge, to update their learning by way of either MDPs, EDPs, or taking certificate courses, or taking a in-depth module on a particular emerging body of knowledge. Like, for example, people earlier might not have studied courses like AI, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, collaborative robots, robotic, cloud computing, and all that. They can now take specific courses online to facilitate their upgradation, enhancement of their skill, and even acquiring higher knowledge. Right now, people who are working in industry may not be interested in pursuing a master's degree or doctoral degree because they may not like to give up their job and come for full-time learning. There are risks involved. Therefore, without leaving the job, one can think of enrolling on a part-time mode in online masters and doctoral programs, and therefore it perhaps would enhance the skill of practicing managers and engineers. Right now, the focus on learning and lifelong learning and acquiring newer knowledges, because knowledge emerges every 2 years, and therefore hopefully this will make Indian industry more competitive, and they're able to offer the value for money to the customer, and that's where our entire Atmanirbhar Bharat, perhaps that dream can only be realized if people working in industry are updated with the greatest of the latest of knowledge and skills to make Indian products globally acceptable. Because unless our Indian products are globally offering value for money, that means a high quality product at lower cost. This calls for innovation, improvement, quality focus, and our people, our technology actually would make a difference, and therefore impact of this would be that more and more people in industry might come forward to acquire latest skills so that it enhance their competitive advantage, and that will contribute to Indian products offering value for money. Rigid system that prevails now does not encourage people to acquire MTech and PhD program, and industry also doesn't give major value to master's and doctorate degree holder. So the focus on lifelong learning is very important. Then real life problems in industry will get focus of research. As I mentioned, since focus of this policy, that conduct research which is socially relevant and relevant to the Indian industry. Therefore, one would hope that research projects that faculty members take would not be simply extensions of their American professors, whether it has a direct applicability or not. Therefore, maybe more real life problems would be undertaken. Industry would sponsor research projects to institutions which would be more relevant to enhance their competitive advantage or competitive capability. And one would, this collaboration with industry and academic institution perhaps would be a win-win proposition, and research problems would be more relevant and would become respectable. You see, where research solves the problems of society, people would respect researchers. If research does not solve the problem at all, even respect for researchers will not be that high. And therefore, one would hope that because of the socially relevant research focus, it would enhance the respectability of research itself. Then summer internship for faculty. Faculty can now go in for summer internship for acquiring the understanding of the practices happening in industry. Actually, one important point here that one notices, in very early period, the universities and technical universities were ahead of the industry. Today, industry is ahead of institutions in terms of technology. For example, your college may not be able to afford the latest technology which industry already has, and therefore teaching with outdated technologies, showing exposure to outdated technologies which have no relevance, perhaps does not improve the quality. So therefore, do summer internship or summer immersion of faculty members. You give the 2 months of summer internship of the faculty in industry, or compulsory internship all with students in industry will give intellectual support to industry and solve their project. So a greater need to industry and academia coming together through way of faculty having summer internship, compulsory internship of the students, that is almost made, and industry should also realize the need of intellectual support that they can get from these interns to solve their problems in a project-based manner, which means that even industry calls for a more liberal mindset in welcoming people from engineering colleges as interns, as a great help to them rather than taking a burden. And many times it becomes a problem to find internship to your students in industry. It should be the other way around. The industry must almost jump at the idea of getting a brilliant BTech student to become an intern, because he may provide a very, even if you fund such an internship, it's a low cost funding of a brilliant mind in solving your problems in a project based, instead of just become a time pass. Give a specific project based a challenge to the intern or a group of interns, and this way industry can solve its problems in a very cost effective manner, provided they encourage internship, they encourage academic and institutions coming together, which actually right now is not happening. Another very major game changing thing which is already in practice now. I have it in my university here. I have universities in fact, IIT Dhanbad and Mandi, where I'm chairman board of governors. IIT Delhi has now a concept of professors of practice. Now, in fact, in the general idea is that a professor has to have a PhD, and not only have a PhD, has to guide at least 2 PhDs or 1 or 2 PhDs, two jointly or 1 independent, as you know. Therefore, a concept of professor of practice now enables a person from industry who's reached very, a great experience and in research and practice and management, without a PhD, with a master's degree alone, a person may be appointed as a professor of practice in an IIT and any institutions. Anyone in your college can have a professor of practice, full professor of practice without a PhD, or associate professor of practice without a PhD. Only these two, professor of practice and associate practice. If a person has 15 years of experience in industry, one can appoint him or her as associate professor of practice without a PhD, and at the top management level, if with the experience of 20, 25 years as maybe in the top rung of the management or engineers, or you've been a chief engineer, a professor of practice where you can share your experiential learning with students, and therefore people from industry can join academia without a PhD and share their experiential learning with students, and hopefully this would make teaching learning more attractive, because when students hear from the actual practice from a person who has worked in industry for decades and shares the experience, perhaps that theoretical knowledge given by an academic professor with a PhD degree and a practical knowledge given by the professor of practice together would make learning far more complementary. And therefore, this way, industry may find an opportunity in becoming a professor of practice in academic institution even without a PhD. And to some extent, this is now becoming very popular. And but it's becoming more popular when a person is about to retire. A person is retiring in next 2 years, then he thinks of becoming a professor of practice in some academic institution. And there is a provision now, therefore, hopefully, the opportunity for interaction from industry to academia would come, and people from faculty from industry through summer internship. Now, all these provisions hopefully would enhance the academic institutions' quality as well as the quality of and capability of and the competitive advantage of industry together. Now, CSR funding, the corporate social responsibility funding, will bring academics and industry together in a modular learning, would help in lifelong learning, and therefore perhaps industry can use their CSR funding. Is said, as you know, that it's a 2% of your average profit of last 3 years have to be mandatorily used for CSR purposes. And education, funding academic institution is one of the acceptable budget head for using for CSR purposes. So if the industry and academia come together, and industry in any way has to spend 2% of their profit per year on funding, why not give this money to academic institutions in giving a very, very, very good relevant research funding projects, or spend this money on entrepreneurship, or fund a lab or something. That means do hand holding of an institution, a private institution, hand holding by giving money, and therefore CSR funding also itself enhances this case. Now I'll talk about the implementation framework as well as challenges. I'm coming to closer. For example, AICT has developed a very powerful document, and I'm borrowing from there. That in fact, as AICT has developed an implementation framework as per AICT, and I was a member of the committee which developed this framework. In 9, you can see here how to, there's a separate chapter on each one of them, and this document should be available in AICT. A multidisciplinary holistic education. It tells you how to evolve, how to do it. The implementation framework is, NEP 2020 tells you what is to be done. Implementation framework given by AICT tells you how to do it. Great details are given in that. I'll perhaps do some of these. So these 9 modules through which, these 9 chapters through which AICT is giving an implementation framework. How to go in for multidisciplinary and holistic education. How to give equity and inclusion in higher education. How to do research, innovation, and rankings. How to make education have a global reach, outreach of higher education. How to develop motivated, energized, and capable faculty. Because as I mentioned, the whole focus of implementing is faculty driven and student centric. And unless we nurture motivated, energized, and capable faculty, we cannot realize this dream. Faculty is the soul of an institution, of an academic institution. So the faculty development program that under which I am speaking to you is one such hand-holding effort by AICT, Faculty Development Center, that they are sponsoring this project, because on your own you may never have felt necessary to invite me to speak to you, which in fact has not happened so far. Therefore, this is a proactive hand-holding by AICT, that some people, very chosen people, in a very competitive manner. In fact, as you know, some of the list, there are only, I think, total at a national level, there are only 16 to 18 distinguished AICT chair professors. It was 12 last year. This has been extended. There are only 18 people. And each one of them, in fact, four of them are former IT directors. Three of them are former chairman of Atomic Energy Commission. And some of them are, in fact, even Professor R.A. Mashelkar, R. Chidambaram, former chairman Atomic Energy. These are the people, 18 AICTE distinguished chair professors. Now, they are funded by AICTE, and the institution has to be eligible in terms of their caliber, their ranking in NEC or NEP. Again, an incentive for good quality education. Then the funding is by AICTE. The educational system, for example, you have given in online mode, which is acceptable, all the lectures. Some of these could have been offline. If it is offline, the only responsibility of the institution is to offer a local travel and local hospitality of boarding and lodging. That's all. The air travel, suppose I have the other universities I have is let's say the Christ University in Bangalore. If suppose I was to go there, the air travel would be again given by AICTE. The other university I have is Hyderabad, VGIT. So air travel and the sponsorship is AICTE. Local hospitality of boarding, lodging, and local transport is by the institution concerned. This way, we are really trying to create that whatever faculty development, so that we are able to make motivated, energized, and capable faculty in these institutions. And therefore, it's a great opportunity that AICTE, FDC, in fact, even the greater change in those of you might have been associated with the AICTE earlier. The new avatar of AICTE is now greater hand-holding, more proactive, more facilitating, more nurturing, more helping hand. And FDC, the Faculty Development Center, through which I am speaking to you, is one such initiative. Similarly, encouraging faculty development programs to institutions where you become coordinator. The AICTE will give you three lakhs of funding, and your people would conduct those programs. There's the whole spirit of this is to create motivated, energized, and capable faculty. Then integrated higher education system. How to come out with the silos that mechanical engineering people do not talk to electrical engineering, they do not talk to civil engineering. How to make the higher education system integrated. And not only integrated in the higher education, integrated the entire academic supply chain, primary education integrated with the secondary education integrated with higher education, and then the research. And therefore, the entire, so that you look at education as a seamless academic supply chain, which would integrate the higher education system in totality. Then it also speaks about the governance and regulations. It identifies the structure of the board of governors. AICTE has clearly given the structure of a board of governors. A lot of people from industry, alumni, and others have to be there, and therefore it talks about the obligations of the regulating bodies. And in regulation, with a very simple, beautiful way, I know you must have heard about it. The regulations have to be light but tight. That's, in 2 words, the entire philosophy of regulation is being defined by AICTE or this policy. The regulation has to be light but tight. That means no over regulation, no over regimentation, no over control. That means you make the regulation less rigid. Light but tight means that if you violate it willfully, you violate a provision of the regulatory body, and if one is caught by that, then they had it. So that it creates a sense of self-regulation. That if you are self-regulating, if you are conscious of following the norms of the rules of the game on your own, then no issues, no major enforced regulation, light. But if you're violating that, it's tight. It can get you into problem. And therefore, it focuses on governance and regulation. Then promotion of Indian languages, arts, and culture. In fact, there are since it to make the Indian education more holistic, it's now promoting, and there's a division in AICTE now in promoting Indian languages. Already the BTech degree programs in Indian languages, 8 of them and the idea is to increase this catchment to 11 Indian languages, and both in not only permitting, facilitating by bringing textbooks in languages, by translating good books, encouraging faculty to give incentives in writing original books in Hindi and other mother tongue, and arts and culture by permitting, accepting courses in arts and culture, dramatics, music as a part of engineering education. They count towards your total credits you take in becoming an engineer. And finally, how to use technology to achieve the goals of national education policy. So greater use of technology, the one that I'm using now to reach you, and focus on integration. Now, these are the 9 modules. I hope these are 9. The AICT has developed a very powerful framework in implementing these 9 framework, and as an individual, I was part of that committee which prepared that. Now, there are now challenges in implementation. As I said, that the policy is great, and by now you must have known it. It's truly transformational. It's not very incremental change. But you know that a policy is as good as implemented on ground. Unless we implement it with the spirit with which it's generated, unless it's so much pains that the nation has taken in creating this policy, unless we implement it with the spirit it's implemented, the spirit is created, it may not have that major impact, because I believe a policy is as good as implemented. Even a great policy poorly implemented may not have a major impact. Hence, a major challenge. The policy is great. The challenge on and the government is keen to see it implemented right from the top top level of the country, the highest level. There's a sincere interest in seeing that this policy gets implemented in the spirit with which it's created. Its onus lies in institutions to make use of this great policy, and the challenge lies in developing a clear-cut roadmap at the institute level. At your own institution, you need to really create a roadmap to implement such an ambitious transformational national education. It's extremely ambitious, it's truly transformational, and since it's ambitious, transformational, you really require, it cannot be implemented with casual intentions and not through hypes, and you say that you are following the NEP fully. It's not even fully developed in the sense that the Higher Education Commission has not even come. So therefore, with sincere efforts, you need to develop a realistic roadmap. And a roadmap means that initially take the low-hanging fruits first. First, do easily implement what is easily implementable without much of investment. Open your mind, be liberal, and therefore a clear-cut roadmap on the part of every institution is required after they have understood what it means. And unless you have that clear-cut roadmap, such a great, ambitious transformational national policy may not be able to get the desired result it has. It focuses on digitalization of education, so much focus on online, and flexibility it calls for, and a very powerful information infrastructure. That means institutions have now to, instead of investing in buildings, a 5-star building, the investment has to be more and more on information infrastructure because of the greater focus on online education, digitalization. Now, we have a national digital library where everyone in the country can have, the huge National Digital Library in IIT Kharagpur has initiated that scheme. Everyone in the country would have free access to some millions of books free of cost by using the National Digital Library, which has been now open to public, everyone, irrespective of the. Now, in order to make full use of National Digital Library, which gives you access to all possible books, global books, so that that capacity to buy books is no longer required, but it calls for a very rich, capable information infrastructure and bandwidth. If a student can't even log in because you don't have the bandwidth, therefore the major investment has to be in tremendous unlimited bandwidth and video, calls in terms of conducting online lectures, so that the video doesn't become weak and the voice gets dropped or voice becomes broken, because a good quality video lecture calls for an uninterrupted availability of bandwidth and the kind of technical support that you require. And unless you have invested liberally in your information infrastructure with high degree of quality standards and academic culture, therefore, as a result, we need to invest money extensively in creating your own studios where you can have smart classrooms where two-way lectures can be delivered. For example, the limitation with the kind of Zoom platform that you have gone in, that I can barely see people. They can barely ask me direct questions from wherever they are. But in a smart classroom context, a person can have two-way. I can see them. They can ask me questions. I can respond in real time. So more and more institutions need to spend money in developing smart classrooms with the state-of-the-art information technology and digital technologies in place. A lot of money needs to be spent on them rather than buildings. And particularly for implementing frequent exit and entry, you need to focus on digital depository of documents and e-verification. Because unless you're able to quickly know that, yes, this person studied 5 years back with us, he graduated with a diploma, and you don't have to ask for documents, you have a digital depository of documents and e-verification, so that that frequent exit and entry, a lot of people leaving, coming, unless you have a very powerful digital depository of documents and e-verification, practical feasibility of frequent exit entry may not be possible. So another very important major challenge is huge amount of money spent in quality information infrastructure and video studios. Then the National Credit Framework, NCF, requires effective collaboration amongst institutions to facilitate. Now you have to identify with who, with MOUs with the institution where you'll accept their credit, they'll accept your credit. This calls for a more effective collaboration even amongst your competitors. That therefore a very high degree of collaborative requirement. By nature, we are not collaborative. For example, maybe in your own institution, departments A may not collaborate with department B. Institution A may not collaborate with institution B. They may not be aware, and as a result, because by nature we are not very collaborative, we are not very open. Unless we collaborate liberally, thinking that collaboration is a win-win proposition, even if you collaborate with your competitor, he's not, neither you will lose nor he'll lose, both will win. And this calls for that degree of understanding and effective collaboration amongst institutions to facilitate the transfer of credits. And highly variable quality standards comes in a way, an academic culture. The problem with our institutions, particularly in the, but it applies to both government and private, we have extremely wonderful quality institutions, and we have very low quality institutions all existing together, maybe under the same affiliating university. Therefore, the problem of collaboration would come because the quality standards are highly variable amongst institutions. Now, how to collaborate an institution where you perceive that the quality levels are not high? You may not be happy that if you accept their credits to be transferred to you, or if people don't perceive your institution as a good quality institution, they may be hesitant to accept your credits with them. Therefore, this collaboration focuses on reducing the variability of quality standards among the institutions and the academic culture. Some institutions are very open and liberal and very encourage collaboration, multidisciplinarity, very flexible in their rules, very liberal in funding in faculty and research. Others may not be. Therefore, this is a major challenge is coming the way. Maintaining quality focus in 40%. Now, 40% of the courses can be delivered in online mode. It's a great thing. Your cost of education will come down, and hopefully this should be reflected in reducing the fee structure so that education becomes truly inclusive. But then the major challenge is how to make online education a quality education. Here, because we are hesitant to invest money, for example, even now I had difficulty in getting logged into a Zoom. They say you require a commercial Zoom platform, which I didn't have here. Therefore, unless we spent money in a big way, the online courses may actually not be, you may not be very clear. For example, although I can see there are now 82 students, people are faculty students registered in this, it shows 82 participants. It started with about 100 people, and maybe that is speaking for 2 hours. Although at my age, I don't feel the difficulty, but then 2 hours at a stretch is quite a pain on the people. Maybe so. I'm now left with only 82. But how many of these 82? I can only see two myself face and one face of one Dr. Pankaj Tomar. That's it. I am not able to see the face of even people who are logged in. And the flexibility such online offers to the recipients of this lecture, that they can show their attendance without really listening to me. All that you need to do and bring the challenge of an online education. And in Corona, we have seen this. A student may not be listening to the lecture at all because he has to put off his video and mute his voice, audio. The registration shows he is listening, but he may not at all be listening. And I've seen it personally in my classes. In fact, I just checked up randomly. I asked, in fact, this could be give a good humor. What happened in Corona Kal? I just checked up. I was telling my lecture to an MBA student, and I said, "Can you show me a video?" And he said, "Sir, I can't show you." Why? So I'm working in my field. I'm working in my field. Now this fellow is logged in my lecture, but he's working in his field. This can happen in online education, provided you invest in technology where everyone has to be physically present, but that means the video cannot be put off. And a person can directly ask me questions and I can respond. That means you have to create a real life online education almost resembling offline. And therefore, as a result, there are challenges of maintaining the quality focus. You can deliver 40% online education, but how to make quality of online education as good as now this another is a very major, and I personally feel very sad about it. Now, when we started our first education policy, Dr. Kothari Commission, I must be knowing, in 66 and 68, first policy came. Now, Kothari Commission had advocated that 6% of GDP must be spent on education. The second education policy in 1986 again reiterated that we must spend 6% of GDP on education. Even the third, the national education policy, NEP, which is very ambitious, extremely ambitious, which the previous two were not, again asked for 6% of the budget of GDP must be 6% of GDP must be spent on education. Now, all the three policies so far, including this one, is asking for 6% of the national GDP to be spent on education purposes. But right now, even at this point in time, I think not more than 3% of the budget is being spent on education, which means that it calls for the country to recognize the importance of education as a nation building process that this new national education policy talks about. Therefore, the government and the society, I'm not saying that the entire money should come on this. The education must be richly funded, either through industry giving liberal contribution to support, because industry is the beneficiary of this education. And so either industry or the government or the society through, because education is a good cause. Liberal donation, American people liberally donate, even alumni donate in a big way through chairs and in the name of their memories of their parents, or giving industries, giving labs, donating. So this, unless budgetary support to education is half of what is even expected, and but though 6% in 66, 6% in 86, and now 6% even now, and the actual investment is only half of it. So which means that one of the biggest challenge in realizing such a great policy is that unless we liberally fund by the government, by the industry, by the society, by the individual donors for a good cause of education, the great potential of this national education policy, because of the non-availability of funds available for it, may not be fully realized. That's a major challenge. Declining interest of learners in STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. Now, you say it's an unfortunate thing that in the current scenario, the interest of the people in studying engineering is going down in a big way. Studying in technology is going down, studying mathematics is going down, studying science is going down. They're going more for business administration and commerce, economics, philosophy, history. They're important, but the engineering technology is the engine of growth of a development of a country. So reducing the interest of society in engineering technology is a cause for serious worry. And as a result, the challenge is how to make this national education policy, although we made it liberal. Okay, do not study all engineering, you study some art, some culture, but everybody only studies arts and culture and music and does not study engineering technology, or does not study core branches of engineering, mechanical, civil, electrical, only study computer science. My worry is that the purpose would be defeated, because engineering education has to be holistic, and computer science and information technology should be enabling technology. But core branches of engineering in mechanical, civil, electrical, chemical, mining, metallurgy, unless we spend in this, and very recently the new ICT chairman has come from IIT Guwahati. He's also shown concern on this, that you cannot become a developed nation by ignoring core branches of engineering, which is happening, is a major challenge. How to revive the interest in core engineering branches by leveraging the national education policy, and is a major challenge. The non-availability of good textbooks and LMS, learning resource materials in engineering technology in Hindi and mother tongue. Although I said that although ICT is trying, but it's not yet available in a big way. Therefore, we need to really utilize the flexibility of studying engineering textbooks. We require good research material, good textbooks in mother tongue, and unless we have good learning resource material in the language, perhaps the quality and the popularity of studying engineering in your mother tongue will not be so. Challenges of placement of students pursuing degrees in mother tongue, and particularly MNCs. The mode of interview and group discussions is in English. That's why one beautiful feature of this policy, which perhaps I should have stressed earlier, while you can study in your mother tongue, but you must study English. The focus on studying English is also as much as now. So it's not that you study mother tongue, you don't study English. English is our link language amongst the states, amongst companies, amongst MNCs. So while for understanding engineering, you may take help of mother tongue, but in order to disseminate that understanding or succeed in interviews, in job interviews, a person must, even a person who's studying in Hindi, must be trained in speaking, understanding good English. So it's not that mother tongue says you don't study English, because right now, these people who are not able to communicate well effectively in placement interviews, they actually stand eliminated from job potential. So therefore, there'll be a challenge if you have done a BTech degree in Hindi medium in computer science or mechanical engineering. The placement may become, because if people have been ultimately the placement which becomes an engineer to attracting a admission. So how to get people studying in Hindi medium or Marathi, Gujarati or Tamil, getting job for that? The committee which I chaired had given a proposal. I am not too sure, because they can't do it because there are states involved. The proposal was that in order to encourage placement, because everything is placement, and it's also true that as an engineer, as a junior engineer, you'll be working on projects. You'll be dealing with the labor force in your language in Hindi, or so that if you speak to them in English, they will not understand. So even to become an effective operating level engineer at the junior engineer level, your work performance will be better if you can talk to them in technical language in their own language of the operators. But in order to that, the state government perhaps should facilitate that in their state government policy framework, certain percentage of jobs in state undertakings, in state government departments, where the official language is the mother tongue, the regional language, if they say that certain jobs are reserved for only those people who have done their BTech degree in their mother tongue or their regional language in which they state. So if each state comes out with certain degree of incentivization in giving preference or even reserving those jobs only for people who have done BTech in mechanical engineering in Hindi medium or Marathi, perhaps people would give a push to it. If there is no such incentive available, the challenge is how to have permitted people to study in engineering in Hindi, but nobody gets a job after getting BTech in Hindi. And then, of course, containing cyber frauds and crimes in digital education is a major challenge. Then these are, of course, some of the, I'll simply flip through because I don't have time to. Holistic education, I actually done that. Therefore, all these 9 factors it gives it. The training has to be attitude, skill, and knowledge, all mixed. Increased in disciplinarity, regulator to carry out amendments in APH by permitting relaxation. So therefore, these are how to do it. Even a regulator has to change core subjects to include foundation courses. Establishment of academic council. Each institution has to have flexibility. First year to be common in all branches with no option for exit based on performance. First year, second year, first year and aptitude, a person can move in for other branches, got admission in mechanical, moved into some other thing, and show that branches are equitable. It's not that everybody moves to computer science in the second year and even mechanical becomes out of range. So a balanced approach is required. Immediate revision of curriculum with assessment tools. BTech to be minimum 4 years and MTech to be without. Then equity, inclusion, and GR. Again, it gives you what is meant by equity, personalized learning, balancing to be done by skill components. Complete migration. In fact, from ITI to IIT is the an IIT, a person from ITI can do diploma, from diploma to BTech, from BTech to MTech, from MTech to PhD. So it's possible for an ITI person to eventually get the degree from an IIT. Then coaching menace, which is coming the way of admissions. Then gross cost of education need to be brought down by means of blended and teaching, and must be passed on. The benefits of blended learning must be passed on to reduce the fee. An optimal mix of face-to-face and online. Complete online may not be an answer for technical education. ODL, and of course the perception about ODL, online distant learning has to be that it's a quality learning, and quality has to be ensured. Then research, innovation, and rankings. There's a lot of initiatives taken. It's just a listing that you can get it from the AICT's thing. Global outreach of higher education. More focus on internationalization, induction programs mandatory. AICT's existing training programs to be popularized and simplified. Credit recognition transfer already talked about. To frame broad guidelines on academic bank of credits already talked about. Motivated, energized, and capable faculty. All these, Department of Education Technology must be established in institutions. Dean of Professional Studies and Academic Senate, and then National Initiative for Technical Teachers Training, NITTT. And there are a number of FDPs, QIP, RPS, MOE, LEAP program was done, in fact, Ukeri, AICT's Ukeri leadership program. Then AICT Atal Academy is already in place. AICT professional development grants are given. Integrated higher education, school, integrating school with higher education, integrating vocational with general education. NEP is for enhancing employability skills of students, for teacher education. Then governance. This I already said, HECI Act and Bill is to be tabled at the earliest. And then affiliation system would be over in next 15 years. 100% of the college and the affiliating university would not, even if at all is there, not more than 100 colleges to be given to a university so that they can do a justice to it. And online approval process, those. Then institutional development programs, schemes of ModRob, conference, idea lab. This will continue, idea labs. Profile of owners, academic management. The profile of the ownership of the institution is important component. Their interest in education. Academic management of the institution extremely important to be dealing from the general management of the transparency in the finances of the management. Your functioning, your finances have to be totally transparent. Accreditation, National Accreditation Council will develop, and the Margdarshan team of AICT and model to be followed. Promotion of Indian language, arts, and culture already talked about. Promotion of Indian knowledge systems. AICT already has a department in it. Promotion of Indian culture and arts. Promotion of language and literature. SWAM courses of English are being translated in 8 Indian languages and subsequently in other languages too. And establishment of Indian Knowledge Systems Division in AICT. Technology, the last one. You require a national, education technology, forum. Indeed, our former AICTE chairman, Professor Sasbuddhe, who really was instrumental. I really admire his missionary object in transforming AICTE during his tenure. He is now the chairman of NETF, National Education Technology Forum, which will help you in, secretary is already Professor Sasbuddhe, secretary along with 7 members. They will help the institution for right kind of technology, effective utilization online, and this will do. Now that's it from me, and I'll now stop sharing. No, stop.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And I'll now stop sharing.
2020.
Okay, we'll come to now. All right, it's for you to now.
And I also thank you that for the entire lecture series presented so far under the DCP scheme. Now the session is open for taking the queries. Participants are requested to write their queries in the chat box. So, sir, we are having a number of queries here in the chat box. The first one is from Mr. Harsh Dev. It says that how affiliated colleges can implement NEP policy, because most of the policy guidelines are suitable for private universities or autonomous colleges.
No, it's not true. All it calls for, in fact, gradually affiliating college would cease to exist. In the next 15 years, there'll be all colleges will become either autonomous colleges or will become upgraded to teaching universities or a research university, depending upon the capability. Therefore, it's wrong to presume that this is only thing is that not all policies may be implemented at the affiliating college. That's why I said that each college has to develop a roadmap. After all, for the purpose of collaborating with a neighborhood institution, for academic bank of credit is national policy. No affiliating university can say that they'll not respect academic bank of credit they come into picture. So therefore, it's not true that you are actually, this is self-imposed constraint that your affiliating university will not permit. Now, even the colleges should ask the affiliating university to reform in the light of the NEP 2020. Otherwise, since affiliating colleges make the bulk of the technical education in the country, more than 85% of the graduates coming from these affiliated colleges, private colleges for that matter, it's wrong to think that it's only applicable to standalone universities. Indeed, standalone universities need to be, private universities need to be regulated. Perhaps there's absolutely no regulation on many of them. That's why some of the states have come forward with a commission, higher education commission for private universities in every state. So it's wrong to presume that affiliated colleges will not benefit, but each college needs to develop, as I mentioned, a low-hanging fruit. What is it that we can easily implement? First, for example, multidisciplinarity. You start interacting amongst your own departments and develop curriculum. And if the affiliating university is coming the way, go to them, give them a feedback that they need to revise their curriculum in the light of NEP 2020. It's a policy driven by the Prime Minister of the country, who inaugurated the NEP 2020 29th of July, and the Academic Bank of Credit is again driven. So therefore, this is a national policy with full support of the highest level of leadership. No private, no university can say that they will not follow in line. But you have to make efforts. Instead of assuming that nothing can be done. Okay.
Okay, sir. So the next question is from Mr. Sandeep. He's saying that a student is awarded a diploma based on academic banks of credit. Later, the candidate earns credit, and now he or she is eligible for the UG degree. Once a UG degree is awarded, whether given a diploma certificate would be a valid diploma or will it be a void? What would be the mode of earning a degree, regular, non-regular, or anything else?
I think for that you have to, there are now the UGC as well as AICTE has given detailed guidelines and rules, SOP, standard operating procedure. And once you understand the implications of credit, there are detailed policy, and maybe on their website it's given. Therefore, whether the diploma, what would you do with diploma once you get a degree? It will be written that your diploma got converted into a degree, you earned more. So
Exactly.
what would you do with the diploma once you have a degree? But then there are standard guidelines available, how to transfer. So, I mean, in this nitty-gritty, neither I have complete idea of the standing operating procedure for which AICT and UGC will have to do. But then it's possible how to do it. You develop your roadmap, get into the actual guidelines from the UGC and AICT. You'll get to know what's to be done. Okay.
All right, sir. So the next question is how institutes and industry would be taking NEP 2020 for recruitment. Recently, some institutes of national importance, NIT Delhi or NIT Rourkela, did not shortlist a candidate for faculty position if all the degrees are not from government institutes.
Yeah, okay. I presume some faculty is asking this question. Very valid question, very logical question. Very logical question, very valid. See what's happening now. There are in the name of national. Although I must say that for last 60 years I'm an ITN. So all my education has been ITN. 55 years. You said 52 years because the biodata was maybe 3 years older. I have 55 years. I'm teaching in IIT Delhi. But IITs and NITs, which are called international, they don't come under either AICT or UGC. They come under Parliament, and therefore, because of this reason, the regulator AICT or UGC cannot really prevail on them. They don't come under them. That's why, although UGC says that not more than 8 PhD can be guided by a professor, not more than 6 PhDs can be guided by associate professor, not more than 4 by. There are professors in IIT who may be guiding 20 PhDs because they don't come under UGC, they come under AICT. So therefore, I believe personally that this kind of general sweeping statement that if you are a PhD from non-IIT or non-NIT, even IITs perhaps may not go in for NIT. ये आपके साथ नहीं है, IIT के साथ भी है, NIT के साथ भी है. If you are a PhD from NIT, you may have difficulty in getting a faculty position in NIT. In spirit, it's not good. Although I'm an IIT, I believe that finally what should matter is the intrinsic caliber of the person and the quality of research he has done. And of course, I must also add on to it, there are all kinds of quality of PhDs coming from every place. So as in my university, I insist that if you're coming for a faculty position, you bring your PhD thesis, which will give us an idea of the depth and rigor. So to me, such a blanket ban on not shortlisting NIT or IIT or non-IIT, to my mind, it's not good. But what is important, ensure that the PhD is for a great quality PhD. So quality of PhD should be important. Quality of the person is important. Giving this tag of IIT, non-IIT is, I don't subscribe to it. But since, as I mentioned, they don't come under AICT or UGC, the regulatory framework doesn't work on them.
Okay, sir. So the next question is, if we follow multidisciplinary aspect, then how many maximum credits we can keep in engineering?
No, it's in fact, it's about, I think it's also given, I think the detail would give you about so much. In fact, this is where the internal debate should call for. For example, right now, and you can't, and the implementation has to be in phases. For example, right now we are giving all engineering. To start with, start giving 20% non-engineering. It's within limits. You can go up to 30% non-engineering. There are limits given in the detailed policy, but you can't give all non-engineering at a BTech degree in engineering. There are limits. And I think this must be around at least 70% or 60% or 70% must be in the core discipline. Suppose that means you're doing a BTech in mechanical engineering, 60% of your courses must be mechanical engineering. The remaining 40% can be distributed across engineering, but non-mechanical, maybe computer. Because in fact, this used to happen when I was studying in IIT Kharagpur. I studied a course in surveying and civil engineering, in drawing, in metallurgy, in electrical technology, in humanities and social sciences. They were there. That balanced approach that IIT system was earlier giving, although even now IIT perhaps may not be as liberal as IIT Kharagpur was in those days. So start in your own way, in a phased manner, and then get the detailed guidelines from the regulator like AICT and UGC, you'll get the roadmap. But develop a roadmap. It can't be done by whims and fancies. Suddenly you say, okay, not one. Develop a well thought out roadmap. Initially go small, but clearly, and which I said, pluck your low-hanging fruit, whatever can be easily done at your own level, institute level, do that, and it should be possible. So therefore, it requires a phased, well thought out roadmap. Okay.
Okay, sir. So the last question is, please guide about individual institute role in implantation of NEP and timeline and role of existing universities where these institutes are affiliated.
This such a question, such a tall question. Nobody can answer that to an online. That would, I have all that I have said. If you really heard me fully, is an answer to your question.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir, for sparing your valuable time and joining with us today.
Thank you.
Throughout this entire lecture series, this is a very good platform for listening to you here. And with this, we come to an end of this final valuable session under the DCP scheme. And all the participants are requested to fill the feedback form, which is shared in the chat box. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for joining.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I take this opportunity to thank all the people who have contributed in linking me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for
Thank you.
facilitating this. All right, that's great. I wish you all the best, and hopefully these sessions have given some inputs for you to
Definitely.
enhance the quality of teaching learning process.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
All the